Well, welcome one more time to the first Sunday of this new year. I am so grateful to be with you. If we haven't met before, or maybe if you're a guest here trying out church for the first time, my name is Jordan, and this whole series is one we've been looking forward to for a while to kick off this brand new year, because the new year is such an interesting holiday, at least to me. One in the ways that we celebrate it. Like I think about New Year's Eve, for example. My wife, Emily, and I, we used to, in our first couple of years of marriage, we hosted a New Year's get-together, had people over, and the last, 2, 3, 4 years, we haven't made it anywhere close to midnight. I don't know how many, I think anybody else in here be willing to admit, yeah, I don't stay up till midnight on New Year's Eve? Just a couple of you? Okay, cool, so I'm pretty alone in that. First service was my people. Anyways, I've just noticed how much that's changed. Now we got our 2-year-old and all that. And then, you wake up on New Year's Day and you're there's this whole different range of some people are it's nothing's magic about the new year. Just back to the grind tomorrow. Just going to go, do my job like normal. Don't do resolutions or anything like that. Some of you live for January. You are all about goals and habits and resolutions, colors, words, animals. I don't know how it all works, but it's just this is the time of year that I have so much I am looking forward to. For some of you, this is a year, 2026, that you're it's kind of an in-between year or a waiting year, or there's some things that you're not really looking forward to. For others of you, you woke up and it really did feel different because it is the year of some great milestone. You woke up and you're this is the year that you're getting married. This is the year that you have a child due. This is the year you are graduating or moving or starting a new job or retiring or whatever it might be. And you wake up and you realize, man, the countdown is finally here. Locally here at North Point, especially important for those of you that are guests here, we fall into the latter category because this is the year that we are finally making the move into our future home, and we have actually begun a countdown. It's only 14 Sundays away that it has left here in this space. And so there's something different, waking up January 1st, man, we've been looking forward to this for so long. Now, I'll say, even with all the hope and anticipation, my back still gets a little tight, saying that, because it was on this exact stage about 4:30 in the afternoon on a Sunday at the end of 2019 that I looked at a bunch of high schoolers at Inside Out in the afternoon and told the junior class, hey, you're going to be the first to graduate in our future home, in our new building. And then COVID hit. Many of those high schoolers are now married with children, and we have not moved. So I'm I still feel that, but I'm man, it is close. We are right here. You can go walk it. It all feels so real. And so as a result, every series that we have planned for these next 14 weeks, about 4 different series, our communication team has come together. We have this dual approach where we recognize your lives are continuing like normal. You have the same stresses, anxieties, goals, pain points. We have guests all of the time. Our mission is still to inspire people to follow Jesus. And that's how we structure our series and messages all the time. And we hope that they're helpful in that way. And we recognize we are a local church. We are a local body of people that are going to be making this move together. In our culture, we're typically not great at tradition, at the big moments, at pausing long enough to really remember and celebrate and be grateful, as well as to look forward to and just recognize the weight of what's coming. And we're man, we want to spend these next 3 months really doing that, preparing to make this move well, which is not just making sure all the cables are installed correctly and the chairs are lined up, but to say from a heart perspective, a posture perspective, that we're prepared to go and love our community well, to add great value in this new facility. And so every series is designed to do both of those things. And we felt like this Ready or Not series fell just right in that category because it's a series all about change. In a time of year where so many of us are at least reflecting a little on what 2025 was or what 2026 will be, others of us, are doing the resolutions and the goals. We're trying to add something to our life or take something out of our life. And collectively, as a church, we're preparing to make this move with both the things we're anticipating and excited about, and also recognizing that with change comes some difficult parts that maybe we haven't fully thought about yet, that it's going to look different and feel different and be a different room, and we're going to park in a different spot, and there'll be new faces, and all of that could feel a little uncomfortable. How do we talk about the nuances of change? So we're going to do all that in this series, and I think to get us started even with the topic, I'm just curious, for this opening question, for you personally, do you like change? How would you personally answer it? Because some people are I love change. I do change just for the sake of change, kind of thrill-seeking. Other people are I hate change. I dread change. I think the most self-aware, honest answer is probably it depends. In fact, I wanted to read you, we have kind of like a series overview paragraph that whenever we're about to go in a new series helps align our communicators. And we just felt like there's a lot of nuance to change. That is a bit of a mysterious concept. It's a difficult, a complicated concept. And so I just want to read you the series overview because I was like, I think this actually captures the heart of what I'm trying to say. We all have our own ideas about how to change, yet we struggle to follow our own ideas. Some say we love change, others say we hate it. Honestly, it depends. We like the change we choose and resist the change that's forced. Some of us chase change for the sake of it, creating chaos in otherwise stable seasons of life. Others of us resist change so deeply that we stay stuck in painful, unsatisfying situations simply because they're familiar. We prefer the devil we know. Some fear bad change is always around the corner. Others of us fear we're stuck and will never change. And when we finally admit change is necessary, we want it overnight. Here's the reality. Whether we notice it or not, we are changing day by day, decision by decision, solidifying into people of chaos or peace. From a faith perspective, we are called to change, to renew our minds. And yet, we follow a God who never changes. Maybe that tension tells us something true, that ready or not, change is inevitable. And at the same time, as Solomon reminds us, there is nothing truly new under the sun. There is nuance, complexity, mystery, and different types of change. And so when I throw a question like this, how do we change? It really feels like $1 trillion question. Feels like one of the great mysteries or secrets of life. Like if you could answer that question with confidence, if you knew how to change, now regardless of whether we're going to do anything about it, okay, but if you knew how to change, you would have unlocked something of incredible potential for your story. I think that would be an amazing gift at the end of January if we could answer that question with confidence. Because the reality is, changing what we do is already really hard. Changing our external actions. If you have ever tried in a new year to have a new eating plan or new workout plan or change your spending or have a reading plan, like you know how difficult that is. Just Friday of this week, I went over to Crunch Fitness, right here, half a mile from this building, and there was a line into the parking lot. Just absolute chaos. It will be a ghost town 3 weeks from now. It's January, we're far from summer vacation, but that's just how it works this time of year, right? Like we're trying our best, everybody's putting their best foot forward, everybody becomes a motivational speaker, even your dentist sends you a text like, how did the dentist have my number? Like new floss, new year. Like you're like, wait, it's just all of this kind of stuff, and there's this thing in our culture, this hope, these things that we ultimately look forward to. But changing what you do is already really hard. Changing what's beneath it is even harder. If you've ever tried to change your subconscious reaction to something, your anger, your outbursts, your defensiveness, your anxiety, worry, or fear, the insecurities that you carry, the things that you drift to, the things that you numb with subconsciously, the way that you talk poorly about somebody who isn't in the room or love drama or gossip, all those things inside of us, the stuff of character, of integrity. If you've ever tried to change that stuff, man, sometimes that can feel impossible, feel like a great mystery. Some of us have tried to change those things so long that we really just have a belief about the world that people don't really change. That's the level of skepticism that has grown inside of us. Change is really nuanced and it is really complicated. And so what I want to do in part one is give kind of a roadmap. It is a model of how we change, a tool that has actually informed every single part of this series. And it is from an author, from a book that has become kind of part of our North Point library. There are certain books I realize that we quote often. This is one of those. It is called The Good and Beautiful God by James Bryan Smith. And I like it not only because of the way that the author paints a picture of who God is, but I also like the way he describes himself. He references in the intro, he says, I'm basically nobody special. I'm like the Forrest Gump of Christianity. If you've ever seen where Forrest is going around and just shows up with presidents and famous people and all that kind of stuff. He's like, I'm 1 degree of separation from all these really influential people in the Christian faith. And not like he just met them. Like he was a TA for decades for somebody like a Dallas Willard or Henry Nouwen or even a Brennan Manning. And if those names mean nothing to you, that is totally fine. Just know they're thinkers and philosophers and leaders that influence so much of what the church believes today. And he got long time with these people to where he would write down notes about the way they lived personally and what they taught and put that together. And he was like, I think this is what the Bible has to say for how it is that we change. And he made it simple, which is one of the ways I think you know if somebody's really an expert in something, if they can whittle it all the way down to something digestible. And this is kind of our variation of his model of how it is that we change. He says there's these 4 fundamental parts. One of those is changing the narratives that we all carry. If you've been with us about a year, we actually did a series a year ago called Narratives that was inspired by this book, and all 4 weeks were just on that. But we all have stories that we tell ourselves about the world, about other people, about who we are, about who God is. Some of them are conscious, a lot of them are subconscious. We think they're common sense because we've thought that way for so long, even though there could be flaws in how it is that we think. A lot of them developed when we were 0 to 18 type time range, and they're influencing how we live our lives. We have narratives that we're too much or that we're not enough or we only add value for our performance or when we're helpful, that it's better to be a doormat and not rock the boat relationally or else someone will leave you, that people are not trustworthy, that God is not trustworthy. We have these narratives in our minds that have developed, and as we become conscious and discover what those are, he says you replace those with the narratives of Jesus, with truth, that sometimes when you're stuck, you need new information. Second, he says none of us change in isolation, that we change in the context of community. But there's a practical element of that, of people supporting you and encouraging you and sending you texts. There's also this element where we are social creatures, and it's like we change by osmosis, that whoever it was that ultimately said we're like a collection of our 5 closest relationships was really onto something. We're going to talk next week about why you become much more likely to go bankrupt if your neighbor wins the lottery, as we try to emulate their lifestyle. There's this social habit where we take on people's reactions and thoughts and even ways of speaking and inside language. We change in community. And then ultimately, number 3 is practice. He calls them throughout the book these soul training exercises, but he says you need to practice, like to actually put into practice things that you can't yet do today so that you can someday in the future. He uses this really simple example. He's like a quarterback. He said Peyton Manning trying to throw footballs in a wet environment in the rain. He's like, I can't do that as well as I want to yet, so what am I going to do? I'm going to practice thousands of times throwing wet footballs so I can do that someday. Well, some of the spiritual practices we talk about, reading your Bible or prayer, those are versions of that we spend time doing that regularly, and over time, we start to respond subconsciously different in the future. But he says all of that is ultimately driven by the engine that has a power greater than you. That is God. He says it's the Holy Spirit working together with those elements that ultimately creates life change in us. But even as you look about that, and we haven't gone through the 4 parts of the series to unpack each of those, look at that kind of simple model. Some of that probably is already intuitive to you. But at some point, we do need to see the world different. We need new information. We need people around us. And we need to practice consistently these new patterns to be able to respond subconsciously different in the future. But we need something from outside of us too. Something that we don't actually have yet, a power outside of us, God himself, that drives all of this. Today, in part 1, I actually want to talk about the middle part of that triangle. I want to talk about how it is that God initiates life change in our life, because I think it's really counterintuitive at the beginning of the year. I think so many of us feel like, or maybe culture has told us, that I can change if I just focus on it. Like if I just prioritize, if I write it down as a goal, or if I have it on the calendar, then I'll just do it. I need to just remember to do it. And that lie has kept us stuck in repeating the same resolutions January after January after January. We need a whole different starting point, a whole different humble place to say we need something outside of us. It's a pattern that we have seen now followed for almost a century by all of the different 12 steps recovery groups. Or there's 180 countries now that have some form of 12 steps program like Alcoholics Anonymous that started in 1935 in Akron, Ohio, which is about 30 minutes from where I was born, also the birthplace of LeBron James and Stephen Curry. But it's besides the point. And there was a group of people who got together and said, we're struggling with this, and we want to, in community, figure out how to live different. And they wrote down all of their steps and observations of what was working that has become now this recovery program, not just for alcoholism, but now for almost anything you could want to add or remove from your life, any form of recovery, whether it's overspending or overeating or sexual addiction or emotional recovery. There's all kinds of different types of tools and programs out there. But unanimously, that first step of the 12 steps is this, that the starting point of life change is we admitted we were powerless over blank, that our lives had become unmanageable. And I just wonder for you, Is there anything, and you can be honest with yourself because you don't have to tell anybody around you, is there anything that you would put in the blank? Is there anything that has become unmanageable? That you have a story you've been telling yourself, you've said you could add that or remove that next Monday if you wanted to, but hundreds of Mondays have gone by and nothing has changed. Is there some narrative you have to go to in your head to not have to deal with the pain of it? Or is there something that when you get really honest, this thing is coming out on people around me, it's hurting people around me, it's creating chaos in my relationships or my work-life balance or whatever it might be in my faith? Is there something that if you got really real, you'd have to raise your hand and say, I don't have a grip on this? Is it a secret, a habit, an addiction? Is it a reaction? Is it anger? Is it anxiety? Is it fear? What is the thing that would go in the blank for you? And then step 2, and this is the last one we'll look at. We're not looking at all 12 here this morning, but step 2 is this. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. About 8 of the 12 directly reference God, this higher power, but it's the idea to say, I don't see clearly. I like the reference to the word sanity, that I don't see myself clearly or see the world clearly, other people. I don't see God clearly, but that can be restored, that we can unfog the mirror, if you will. So how does that process happen? I want to look at 2 passages in particular in part 1 today to kick us off. One is an explanation of that process, that ultimately life change, transformation is initiated by God himself. The second is how that actually happens. In the first passage, I want to look at the Apostle Paul, which I think he's a really interesting source to look at life change because he did such a 180 in his own life. He started in this very legalistic, rules-based system, following the Old Testament law to a T. He was perhaps the best at it. And then he writes all of these letters to the first century church describing a completely different process of how it is that we're changed and transformed. And he writes this in 2 Corinthians. He says, "For the Lord is the Spirit," which is an interesting statement in and of itself. If you've ever been like, what is God? Is he matter? Is he energy? What's God? The answer would be God is Spirit, which means he's everywhere, all places. It means he's close, personal, and intimate. It means he's powerful. It means we can be more or less aware of him or attuned to him. And he says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. That it's the presence of God that makes freedom possible in our lives. Freedom ultimately from the power and consequence of sin in our lives, but it's freedom from shame, freedom from guilt, condemnation, freedom from a lot of our old ways of thinking, our old habits and old patterns, freedoms from hopelessness, and all of that is made possible by placing our trust in Jesus. It is his presence that makes freedom possible. He says, so all of us who have had that veil removed can see and reflect the glory of the Lord, can see clearly, be restored to sanity. It's the idea that the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus allows us to see ourselves as we are, see the things that we struggle with as they are, see others, see God more clearly. And it's like this veil is removed from our eyes so that we can see the world as it is and reflect the glory of God. That it's almost like the more time we spend in his presence, it's like he bounces off of us, that his light shines on us, that it's like this glow in the dark, if you will. It's this more time I spend in his light and presence. Other people see the impact of him around me. And he finishes it and he tells us how this change happens. He says, and the Lord, who is the Spirit, makes us more and more like him as we are changed, that's our word of the series, into his glorious image. Notice it is the Lord who makes us, the Spirit who makes us more and more like him. It's not our action, not our energy, our effort, or our New Year's resolution. It is God who is initiating the change. Which means there's a lot that we can pull out of this passage already, right? But one observation for our conversation today is simply that you are not the source of your own transformation. That in order to do something that you can't do that is unmanageable today, you need a power outside of you. And it is God who initiates the change inside of us. Now, I get that there's a lot of mysterious language in that passage, so part of the question is how? Well, how does that actually happen? Which is why I want to go to the second passage, and this is specifically from the words of Jesus, where he talks about a very similar concept, but in an even more personal way. He is with his disciples at the last meal that he'll have here on earth before his crucifixion. And he goes and he's kind of giving his final marching orders, if you will. And he declares or gives this word picture, if you will, that is famous if you've grown up in church world because it's basically the end goal of faith. And he says this, he says in John 15:4, remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. And this is one of those where he immediately tells us exactly what he's saying. He's like, just to be clear, here's who's who in this word picture. He says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Your job is to remain. Your job is to stay connected. And just like a branch bears fruit simply by staying connected to the vine or the tree or the source, and when it is disconnected from the vine, it can do nothing. It just withers up and produces nothing on its own. But its job is simply to remain. There's something in here that has absolutely been growing our whole time and our whole conversation together, and that is this plant right here that is actually real. It's not a fake one. It's live. It's one of our staff members' plants they brought from home, and we named it in Run Through this morning Carl. So we'll refer to this plant as Carl. Carl has been growing throughout our time together. Now, not necessarily noticeable to our naked eye, but if you came back a month from now or certainly a year from now, you would see an entirely different Carl. You know who hasn't been stressed or felt any pressure during our conversation today? Our plant friend. He just has remained. He didn't wake up on New Year's going, you know what, this is the year I'm going to join the 5 a.m. club. No, the 4 a.m. club. And I'm going to do an ice bath and a hot sauna. I'm going to work out for 3 hours and also sleep in. I'm going to eat 15 grams of protein in the morning, but then also fast, have coffee, but no caffeine. And you're like, okay, what? And it's like, I'm going to unplan all this and change my life. This is the year. That hasn't been the approach. Just remain, be, and grow through nutrients outside of itself, through carbon dioxide and water. And that's how growth and plants work. And that's the image that Jesus gives us, paints for us of how life change and transformation happens, is we just stay connected to him. Now, again, there's mystery even in that language. So that's like, how? Okay, what does that look like? Well, he goes and he gives us even more clarity. He says specifically, when I mean remain in me, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love. Stay relationally connected to me. Ponder how it is that I view you. Ponder the consequences of my life, death, and resurrection. Ponder what it means to be in relationship with Jesus and have that grace and forgiveness wash over you. Be around people that point you back to that, in groups that point you to that, environments like this that remind you of that. Spend time talking to and expressing gratitude. And as you stay connected relationally to him, stay connected to that love, it transforms you from the inside out. He says specifically in verse 10, a verse that might sound a little bit like, okay, wait, we do need to join the 5 a.m. club. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. That sounds like, okay, there it is. So we do have some work to do. We do need a knuckle here. We need to, have a plan put together. So it needs to be now really clear what he means by his commands. And he tells us exactly what it is. First, he tells us why the command is important. He says, I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. Meaning I'm not just testing you. I'm not here just like observing you. I have created you so that you would experience the fullness of life, the fullness of joy, real peace, real freedom. That's what I've designed you for. And you will do that if you remain in my love by following my command. And my command is this. Let's be really clear about what it is that I'm calling you to do. Love one another as I have loved you. Love each other is not a new command. Love each other as I have you, connected to Jesus, was new in this moment. That he is the example, that they're to love people as they have experienced Jesus loving them. And then he makes an allusion to what is coming in the next few hours. He says, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And it's at this dinner, he says, you're no longer just my disciples, you are my friends. And he was about to lay down his life, not just for them, but for the whole world, you and I included, when we place our trust in him. He says, model that. Love people with that kind of selfless love, the way that I have first loved you. That's how you know you're growing. That's how you know your faith is increasing. You will see an increased love for people around you, which means we should be really clear at the beginning of a series on change and transformation that the goal of change is to better love those around you as a reflection of God's love for you. That's the end reason why it is we change. It's others focused, and it's a reflection, like the word that Paul used in Corinthians, it's a reflection of God's love for us to the world. The more time we stay connected to him, the more the world around us is going to see that change in us. So I want to ask a question that I think is a challenging and clarifying question in part one of a series on change. And that would be, when you think about any of the changes you desire to add or remove in your life, would any of the changes you desire help you better love those around you? I just don't think this is the common motive for why we want to change. I think the normal human, and even the culture we live in, we want to change to be happier, to be better versions of ourselves. We want to be maybe more successful, make more money, or whatever it is. But I just wonder, when you think about that list, and if you didn't do a resolution, just think of something even now in this moment that you want to add or remove. Would anybody around you benefit from that thing that you have in your life? Would they experience positive change? I think about, for me in my own life, like there was this time in my mid-20s where I had a motive shift around my physical health, where I went from I want to work out to look good on the beach, which is such an ironic and wild motivation for people to have, by the way, right? You go to the beach, there's a lot of people, and nobody's looking at you. Everybody's concerned with themselves. I don't know why that drives us. But anyways, some point in mid-20s, it was like this switch to, I don't want to go home and just be a zombie with Emily after work. I don't want to go home and just need a nap right away. I don't want to go home after preaching on a Sunday and just feel like I need the rest of the day to recover, right? When I take care of myself physically and bring a better energy with what I eat and how I sleep and how I work out, I love her better. I think I'm a better friend. I think I'm a better coworker. I think I show up better with my staff. And that's a whole different set of questions as a result. I started counseling the year before we got married, and in that season, I just realized this pattern. We had dated about 6 years, and I noticed this pattern inside of me to say I would constantly, any disagreement, any argument, I would always turn it back on her. I mean, it's gaslighting, that word's overused, but I mean, that's what I would do. And it was the idea of, I just got so defensive if there was any feedback, if anything was wrong, because my identity was so wrapped up in performance and being right, and you can't get close, and there's a wall here. And it was having consequences on Emily. And to get honest about that, because it's fine, I could keep winning the arguments and keeping her at a distance, but I was noticing the pain and consequences it was having for her. And I started to ask a whole different set of questions about where that came from. When you start to see change for the benefit of others, you ask the different questions, there's a different humility, a different honesty, a different starting point. And so I just wonder, is there a thing that if you added it to your life or you removed it from your life, it would have an impact on those that you care about most? That your family can feel it. Your partner, your spouse, your friends, your kids, your neighbors, your coworkers, they know. If you don't know what it is, you could ask them what it's like on the other side of you. That there is something that has just been around too long, that it's been unmanageable too long. And it's having a consequence on those relationships. And once you identify something that if you change, you would be better at loving people around you, would you start by inviting God in to that process? This is part one here today. And I don't mean that just because we're in church. I don't mean that just to check a box. I mean that authentically. Before you go have a plan and think about, what's step one and who you're going to tell and all that kind of stuff, all that's great. But would you start by inviting God in to the process to say, we can hustle for a few weeks, maybe a few months, some of us that are really disciplined, but any kind of meaningful, lasting life change in my life, it's not possible unless I invite him in first. I was talking just a couple of months ago at the end of the year with Jen Mazzola. It was about one of her messages in a message prep. We had a team together. We're trying to just figure out the ending, the application, and this is a common place to get stuck for communicators, pastors. And one of the things when you do that, when you get stuck, is you just go back and be like, well, what does the text say? What does the passage say? You think about just a popular passage like this one that is used in all kinds of different contexts. Philippians 4, 6, and 7 says, don't be anxious about anything. Instead, pray about everything. And I feel like there's been this movement, I feel it as a pastor, that we almost have to apologize for the verse and say, okay, we know, I just want you to know that anxiety is more complex than that. It's more nuanced than that. I don't mean just a Bible verse and just a prayer and we'll go away. It's a long work, it's a long journey, there's lots of tools, it's counseling, it's all that. And I believe all that is true. My wife is a counselor, I'm a big fan. But my point is sometimes we go so far the other way with the pendulum that it's hey, did we just do what the verse clearly says? You might have been doing all this work and wondering why nothing is changing. It's hey, did we just pause and invite him in? Because it's actually really clear. Just don't be anxious about anything, but pray about everything. In fact, it actually tells us how to do that. It says, tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. It's like, I don't need to have the words to explain, but as I spent more time in gratitude for what God has done and spent more time being honest with him about my shortcomings and what I need, it's like in that space, he provided a peace that transcends, that I can't fully explain. That's just one example, and I'm not saying that alone fixes everything, but it is the starting point. Would we start there? Because the passage is so clear. The passage says to remain, to stay connected to you, that we can't do anything on our own of value. So how do we do that? If you're like, okay, how do I invite God in the process? It sounds like a churchy thing to say, but like, what does that mean? Well, I think step one is what we've talked about all throughout the morning. Step one is admitting I'm powerless to do this on my own. It is the honest, raw humility to say this has become unmanageable. Even though I think I can change this on Monday, I know it's not true. I know that 4 Mondays from now, it's going to be back to the same old. I'm not going to do the Einstein, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I need new information. I need new people. I need something new to practice. I need a power outside of myself, ultimately. I'm powerless on my own. That is a whole different perspective than just write the goal on a piece of paper and you'll hit it this year. That is a whole different starting point in a new year to say, what if that is a source of transformation? And then second, might be a little counterintuitive because it might not seem directly related to the thing that it is that you want to change. But I would say after you've done that, honestly, increase the quality of time spent with him. And you might say, well, I wanted to start working out, or I wanted to start spending, or saving, or whatever it is. But then you just realize, as I spend more time with him, it's like areas of my life started to change that I wasn't even working on because it's fruit, because it just resulted from being connected with him. And we just look at what the passage says, and it's so clear. It says, remain in me, remain in my love. And you're like, yeah, I get it, and that sounds good. And I'm actually all in. I'm just thinking, I am really busy, and it's a really busy year. And I don't have time to commit to a community group. I'll make it to church when I can. And reading my Bible, maybe at a retreat. I'll pray at meals, to kind of check the box. And it's like, I don't know. It says pretty clearly, you can't do anything unless you're connected to him. You can have great plans and great intentions and great motivations, but it's a connection to Jesus that creates that change in our life. Maybe it is something like tomorrow is January 5th. I know it's not the 1st. There's nothing magic about January 1st. And you pick tomorrow to start some kind of Bible plan throughout the year. You download the Bible app and you pick the one that fits you and your stage of life and the right length and all of that. Maybe you've tried to do a Bible in a year plan before and you got a little overwhelmed, 3-4 chapters a day, and then you got to catch up and you get stuck in the Old Testament. Maybe you choose the New Testament. Did you know the math is actually perfect? That if you read just 1 chapter a day, 5 days a week, you actually have 2 grace days to catch up, to you just chill, you will finish the whole New Testament in 1 year. Maybe that's what you choose, or that's what you start. Just pick a spot for you, and there's something about spending intentional time with him that you start to notice these changes in multiple areas of your life. I desire this for you because I fully believe this is possible. We are in the business of life change. I have heard too many of your stories. I have experienced too much life change of my own to believe that life change isn't possible. It's absolutely possible. We are all changing every single day, but we can't change on our own. We do need something outside of ourselves. And part of what I love to dream about is if we collectively do this together, what does it mean for us as a community as we do take this step this year into our future home? And yes, the logistics matter, and yes, I want the roads to be straight, and yes, I want the environment to look good, and that shows we're prepared for people, and all of that matters. But what if also, as people are accepting invites a few months from now to this new place, and we're seeing all kinds of new faces and new stories, what if they're walking into a community that's just honest, just humble, just real? We're not like hiding in all kinds of religious language, but we're just honest about where we're struggling and honest what we can't do on our own, and we're not isolated. But we also have all kinds of hope, all kinds of joy, that we're tasting the joy that Jesus invites us into, that we're seeing transformation, we're seeing life change. We're looking back in our story at things that just weren't possible months and years ago. And there's something about that that's magnetic, something about that that's countercultural. Something about that the people are drawn to, not drawn to the people of North Point, but drawn to the Savior that is making all that life change possible in the person of Jesus. Let's do that collectively together. Let's remain in his love. Let's stay connected to him, because apart from him, we can't do anything that really matters. The idea is you are not the source of your own transformation. And that is not something to say in a condescending way. That is something that is freeing. That's something that takes the pressure off. You can't do this by hustling on your own. The goal of change is ultimately to love better those around you as a reflection of God's love for you. By staying connected to that love, it's like it radiates off of you. It bounces off you. It's like it flows through you to those around you. It's magnetic. It's attractive. It impacts others because we were honest and humble by starting to invite him in a real and new way. Let's do that this year. Would you pray with me? Father, God, we stand here, some of us just with a lot of hope in this new year, a lot of expectation, eyes wide open. God, others of us, like, we're already tired. Others of us are like, we've been doing this for 3 or 4 decades, and it's just nothing's going to change. And God, I just fully believe you have the power to meet us wherever we are in our story. And so I ask that you do that here today. Speak to us at a heart level, at a personal level. God, would you give us hope and your joy? Realize that our job is just to remain connected to you and give us the people, the desire, the tools, the information to do exactly that, to just be with you in 2026. Father, we love you. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Thank you guys for starting off the new year with us. We'll see you next week for part 2.